Hello, welcome to the founding episode of Maps of Reality. I'm your host, Leo Ruiz. What if the quality of your life depends less on the reality that you inhabit and more on the map that you're using to navigate it? I've always been fascinated by the question and the thoughts of, the first coming down to how can two people inhabit the same world but see the world completely different. A lot of this started just on my own personal journey, self-discovery, looking into the inner space, starting to learn, listen to podcasts, read different things, listen to different viewpoints. So with this podcast, my goal is to investigate reality, investigate consciousness. We all know there's something underneath. There's something that we don't understand. There's little synchronicities. There's little laws. There's rules that we just take for granted that I think when we start exploring them, we may not know, we may not be right, but at least we can get a piece of the puzzle. And if we can get this puzzle into better focus, I think all of us will have better lives. And as a society, we'll have a better society. It seems like a big endeavor. It seems a little out there, but it's something that fascinates me. And I'm betting that if you're here and you're listening to me, that it fascinates you as well. So I wanted to do this from the layperson. I'm not educated. I don't have any degrees in any of these disciplines. All I've done is listen to a lot of podcasts. I've explored myself. I've had a big interest in it. And I've started to see some patterns through religion, psychology, history, neuroscience, some of the quantum stuff that's happening now. That's starting to prove some of these, telepathy, just different things that happen in the mind that we're not exactly sure why. And then a lot of disciplines just say, well, we're not going to look at it because we don't understand it. We can't explain it. So we're just going to, the materialist view of it of just, well, if we can't explain it, we're not going to look at it. It's not legit. I think that's leaving now with the availability of podcasts, with different, different thinkers out there. So I've always been fascinated by the big questions in life. I can remember laying in bed on my 10th birthday. I specifically remember I was 10 years old, and I was laying in bed thinking about what happens to you after you die and trying to figure that out, and sitting there and having what would equal probably out to about a panic attack because I couldn't grasp some of the concepts in my head that were happening. And that's one of the first times that I can really remember starting to grasp, try to wrap my head around some of these things and to know that there's something deeper, that there's something we don't understand. Being raised in a Catholic household, but not really participating, doing it as a check mark. And then later, re-entering the Catholic faith with my wife and with my family, and starting to notice different synchronicities and things that I had heard, from some of the New Age, the New Age teachers, such as Joseph Campbell, such as, Neville Goddard. I had a phase where I listened to a lot of Neville Goddard, and what I would see is a lot of same patterns and similar things and similar explanations that I would hear in the gospel readings on Sundays and in homilies and in scripture. But by no means would this be a religious podcast. This is going to be exploratory. I believe that all religions are trying to get us to the same truth, the same truth that science is trying to get us. And if we can start looking at it from both angles and just start asking questions and start talking and say, yes, this sounds outlandish. It feels outlandish, but let's just talk about it. What if we hit on something? So, rambling a little bit, but first podcast episode. I hope you'll bear with me a bit. So, again, most of my education comes from listening to podcasts, which I would imagine if you're here, it's similar for you. From seeing things in my consciousness and from trying to work on things to bring about a different reality than what I'm currently experiencing. That's led me here to asking these questions and ruminating and trying to figure them out, and then listening to different speakers and different interviews and explanations of it. I've listened to and I've read, psychologists, like I said, neurologists, conspiracy theorists, just, different people, economists, different things, where you can see these patterns. And each discipline seems to hold a little piece of that puzzle, but they don't seem to explain the whole picture. And they get to a certain point where it's like, well, this is as far as we've gotten. We don't really understand why this next piece is, and we're not really sure. And there's no evidence to show. And so my biggest thing is like, let's keep that on. And for me, just personally, I'm interested to know. And I think that if we can map our reality in a better way, we can start to change what we think is humanly possible. We can bring about huge changes in our society just by changing ourselves and how we map our own reality. When enough people map their own reality changes. I think you can see that throughout time. I just want to investigate this publicly. I'm not going to ask you to believe me. I'm going to ask you to investigate with me. I'm going to ask you to listen. I'm going to ask you to discern. I'm going to ask for your feedback. I'm going to represent opposing viewpoints as much as I can. Talk to as many people as I can. And I'll change my mind when the reality dictates it. Reality has the final vote. I think we're not going to be stuck to an assumption just because it's part of our identity. I don't want to do that. I want to, go where the information tells us. And sometimes it's going where the intuition tells us. Because that's part of it. We all have an intuition. We all know there's something there. And what is it? I'd love to talk to somebody about it. So, some of the questions I think that we'll definitely talk about, is what is reality? Fundamentally, what is it? Is it just, a meat sack inside this skull getting signals and creating a hallucination? Is it a preset world that we're navigating? Is time predetermined? Is our events and actions and feelings predetermined? Or are they not? And if they're not, how are they being determined? Because things are happening. We're moving along. I'm going to ask you to investigate this with me. Consciousness. What is consciousness? What is awareness? What allows you to hear the thoughts that are being generated in my brain through this microphone into your ears, and you're aware of them, and it's changing your awareness. And what is that? That's one of the investigations I want to go into. Is I'm endlessly fascinated by the thought of awareness, and why only us? Why does it seem as only humans with a higher consciousness? And do animals have consciousness? And is it a different level? And is it emergent? Or, what is it? And again, what is reality? Are there multiple timelines that are available to us at all time, and we just pick and we go? What is it? I'm open to all of it. I'm open to hearing your theories. I hope you send them in. I'm also hoping to hear any recommendations. I will put this in the show info, but we'll have an email address, and that email address, will go straight to me. And basically, I'd love to hear your recommendations on books, your recommendations on speakers, interviews, podcasts, anything that can help, bring it forward, maybe bridge some of these gaps. If we can take some of these disciplines and overlay them, maybe we can see where some of the gaps are filled in and start to have a clearer picture, and then start to ask better questions. Once we have a better understanding of consciousness, we can ask better questions, and solve bigger problems, problems that are still plaguing us, because we're at a point in our humanity. We have so much access to information and communication that if we can all get on the same page and move in a right place, we can change the world. It'll change the world. Again, I'm not saying I'm going to, but I'd like you to come along as we ask the questions, interview people. As I share my thoughts, please share your thoughts right back. I'm doing this because this is something that fascinates me. It's a conversation I love talking about. I love hearing people's viewpoints, and everybody has a viewpoint on it because probably we're all conscious. You may meet some people that don't seem conscious, but I would imagine we're all conscious. So, everybody's a user of this consciousness. Everybody's an experiencer of this consciousness. Everybody can have a say and can relay their experience. And that's where we hear about, the shamanic experience. You hear about people who have, who have visions, you even hear about, physical things, yogis who can levitate, church saints, Catholic church saints that were levitators. There's just so much we don't know. And there's so many anomalies and weird things that just have no explanation. And if they don't have an explanation, then let's talk about them, because it's fun. And it's an opportunity for us to maybe connect some dots. So, investigating consciousness is something that's going to be the cornerstone of this show. Probably personally for me, a big motivator was the question of, why do we suffer? I've suffered mostly at my own mind's, doing. And so I'm fascinated by the question of what is reality, and if we have the opportunity to affect reality and to affect change on reality, why do we suffer in the first place? But can we affect an easing of that suffering? That's a big motivator for me, and if I can help even just one person, if you're listening and you start on this and it helps ease just a tiny bit of your suffering, it's all worth it. I hope it does. For me, it's I think we're all going to suffer. That's something that's a universal. That's another thing that seems to be a universal feature of consciousness. We all feel pain. We all suffer. Is there a way to map reality that helps us to not suffer? And I think religion's been trying to do this forever. I'm not saying that we'll change it, but we'll look at it together. We'll ask these questions. That leads into, how should we live, which is a loaded question. How, we all seem to be part of one consciousness, yet we all have an individual piece of consciousness, and the way you live is by the map that you have. But maybe your map's wrong. That's what I've discovered about myself. Well, my map might be a little wrong, so let me try and update it. And so I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm not here to do anything like that. I'm just here to present, here's some ways that other people have eased their suffering, and maybe it can work for you also. Part of this is I want to understand if we have the ability to participate in a more immersive way with reality. If there's a way that we can affect reality more effectively, I'm vastly interested in that. Manifestation, intention, energy, force, mindset. All of these seem to change the way that our reality works and produces different results. So I just want to kind of investigate that is what can we participate in our lives that will ease our suffering and help us to live better. And when we do that, the rest of all of society lives better. We're all a piece of the, I do believe one of my personal beliefs is that we're all part of, and trust me, I'm going to share my personal beliefs on here, but that we're a wave on the ocean that forgets it's part of the ocean. We're a part of a whole. And I think we all kind of innately feel that, and that mimics in society. You see, we always want to be part of the whole. And why? Well, where does that instinct come from? So again, let's talk about it. Let's investigate. That leads into basically just better agency. So, what's the limits of human possibility on agency? Can we, and how can it explain maybe some of the things that we see in the past, some of the archaeological findings you see in the past, different mysteries in our history that we don't understand, that maybe if we had a better understanding of human possibility and human consciousness and consciousness as a whole, that we, might fill some gaps in. So when I, think about future guests, future subjects, things like that, psychology, something that's always going to be very interesting to me, just our personal psychology, our, you start getting into experimental psychology and things like that, into telepathy, into telekinesis, into remote viewing. I find it endlessly fascinating. I find it endlessly fascinating that our government has spent so many years researching this and developing this, and I don't think they would have done that if there wasn't something there. So things like that really, really interest me. Ancient history does interest me, just because there's so many different possibilities, and we're always finding new things every day. Religion really fascinates me, just because of the kind of the mirror that it holds up to us as a society and as a whole, and what it's teaching, what its bases is in, and where what they're trying to point us to, I see magic in all of it. It's just, do our magic, not this other magic, but, I say magic, but there's things that we just don't understand that religion's trying to help us to understand. So I myself am a practicing Catholic. But I'm also an explorer. And I'm, like I said, I want to explore this world. I'm open to different viewpoints, to different religions, to different explanations. And, I think if we ask the right questions, it leads us right back to God. That's my personal belief. I believe that God is what holds us all together, and it's just us trying to understand him. Again, but I'm also open to listening. I'm also open to listening to alternate viewpoints. I'm fascinated with human behavior. I'm fascinated with some of the mechanics of behavior, the physiology of behavior, genetics, the way genes express in response to our environment, and how could that be the physical manifestation tool of consciousness, that the tools that consciousness use to build our reality, build our bodies, and everything that we see. So behavior is very, very, very interesting to me. Philosophy, what have the great thinkers and some of the great users of consciousness, what have they found within their inner space that they've shared with us that can be of value to us? I'm a big believer in that. I think it's an important exercise to just ask those questions and talk about them and see if we can get a little closer to a consensus. So there's, just a few of the episodes, a few of the topics I think that we're going to cover in some of these episodes. If you're here, I would bet that you're somebody whose map of reality isn't giving you the results that you would like. I would bet that you search for answers, maybe been into the church, out of the church, whatever church that is for you. You've been to podcasts, you've been through self-help, you've been through therapy, you've been, you have friends that you talk to about this, and you're curious about life, but you're also curious why there's gaps in your life and how those gaps can be closed. That's what got me started here. And I think if you're here, you're probably similar. If you're here, you're probably somebody who feels that there's something else underneath that we can feel, but we can't explain, that we can feel, but we don't know. I think if you're here, you're feeling that. And you want some answers. And we may not give them to you, but we're going to try. We're going to find out. We're going to give you something to think about. So I'm thinking if you're here, you're not somebody looking for easy answers. You're looking for better questions. And that's what we hope to ask, is better questions, better information, better pattern recognition, better lives. So I think what's going to make this different is that we're not going to build this on beliefs. My beliefs, any of the interviewees' beliefs, any of your beliefs. We're going to build better maps. We're going to build better maps of reality. We don't defend ideology. We're not going to defend it. We're going to investigate it. And we're not going to claim that we're certain, because we're not. We're going to remain curious. Curiosity is going to be at the heart of this. So just to kind of wrap this up, I don't know where this investigation will lead. I expect I'm going to change my mind on a lot of things and a lot of times, because I'm still very ignorant on this. It's endlessly fascinating to me, but listening to some of these podcasts, I know I'm very ignorant to a lot of this, but I want to get better. I want to understand it all better. If we can build better maps together, maybe then we can all participate in reality more intentionally, with more love, with more kindness, with more compassion. And then we can develop greater agency, and we can figure out what's possible for us, as a race, as a society. So welcome to Maps of Reality.